Hey everyone, this is going to be my beginner's Mythic Plus guide to Brewmaster Monk. In this video, we'll go over everything you need to know about Brewmaster Monk, its talent trees, its CDs, its defensives, and how you play this class in a Mythic Plus setting. Let's go ahead and get into it. For our hero talent trees, we will be looking mostly at Shadowpan. Both of these talent trees are very viable. I just prefer Shadowpan because it has amazing defensives, great damage, and it really does not affect my rotation like Harmony does. Master of Harmony really centralizes everything around using your Celestial Brew, which can change your rotation and possibly put you into some awkward circumstances. I know this is 100% viable. I've seen a lot of Brewmaster monks use this, but I prefer Shadowpan. Like I said, it's great defensives, it's great damage, and it does not affect my rotation. For our Brewmaster talent tree, this will be the basic preset talent tree that you will be using starting off playing Brewmaster. There are a few things in this tree that I run personally, just because I feel like it works better with the class. I know that you can run special delivery, but I feel like the chance of getting a barrel toss is just too low. I like to have control, and I like to have 100% chance of damage being out, so I like to use Rushing Jadewind. It's just a rotation that I am used to, and I feel like it is still very strong, very viable. The only other thing that you could really change out of this class is Ox Dance and Black Ox Adept. I feel like you can take both of these off and you can put it in Blackout combo and Call to Arms, which is definitely, this is more of an offensive talent tree that you could be using. I prefer Ox Dance and Black Ox Dance because it is just more of a defensive, especially for beginners. I really don't think you need to be worrying much about damage when you're learning how to play this class in Mythic Plus. You need to be learning how to survive and make sure their defenses are staying up, so I would just stay with this tree how it is. For the generic monk tree, I would just stay with this. There is a few things that you can change with this class tree, but they're kind of minor things in my opinion, especially for a beginner when you're learning how to play Brewmaster Monk. They're not things that you really need to worry about changing right now. The only thing that you can possibly change is instead of going for Dampen Harm, you can go for Dance of the Wind for more of a passive defensive, but especially for Mythic Plus, I feel like Dampen Harm is just way better since it reduces all damage you take by 20% to 50% for 10 seconds, with the larger attacks being reduced by more. I think this is just way better, especially for big pools. So all in all, I would say that you really do not need to worry about changing much in this talent tree. I know there will be people who disagree with me, but I will be looking at this as mostly as beginner friendly as I can, where it gives you the most defensives as I can without doing ZDPS. So this would be the generic monk tree that you would be using. Let's go ahead and talk about our UI for a moment. The most important thing we need to monitor as a Brewmaster Monk is our stagger level. As you can see, when I walk up to this dummy and I start taking damage, my stagger level is increasing. Basically, you could look at stagger is damage that you will receive over time. So the higher the stagger level, the more damage you will take, and the more detrimental it can be as a Brewmaster Monk. Really, the only things we can do to reduce that stagger is using our Purified Brews. Purifying Brew you have 2 charges of, and it clears 50% of your damage delayed with stagger. So this, you will always want to make sure you at least have 1 charge on cooldown, and you use the second charge when your stagger level is much higher and you are taking much more damage. So you almost use it as an emergency charge. Something Purifying Brew also does is it instantly heals you for 25% of the damage it cleared. So this is one of your main survivability abilities that you need to use at all times as a Brewmaster Monk. Something that Purifying Brew also gives you is a Purifying Chi, which increases the absorption of your next Celestial Brew by up to 200% based on your current level of stagger. You can increase these Purifying Chi stacks the more you use Purifying Brew, and we will talk about the Celestial Brew later on in this video. Now, there are 2 abilities that I want to make sure that you're using off cooldown. One is your Blackout Kick, and the other is the Rising Sun Kick. Both of these are your main damage dealers of Brewmaster Monk, so you should always have both of these off cooldown. The other 2 abilities that I want to talk about before we talk about our core rotation as a Brewmaster Monk is Keg Smash. Smash a keg of brew on a target, dealing physical damage to all enemies with 8 yards and reducing their movement speed by 20% for 15 seconds. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. This also grants Shuffle for 5 seconds and reduces the remaining cooldown on your brews by 3 seconds. So that is the big important thing that you want to talk about Keg Smash, is it reduces the cooldown of your brews by 3 seconds. So it reduces the cooldown of the Purifying Brew, which heals you for 25% instantly and clears 50% of your stagger, which is something that you need to make sure that you're using off cooldown. The other ability that I want to talk about is Breath of Fire. Breathe fire on targets in front of you, causing fire damage, deals reduced damage to secondary targets, and targets affected by Cake Smash will burn, taking fire damage and dealing 5% reduced damage to you for 12 seconds. So this is an incredible offensive, but also is amazing defensive, and you need to make sure that you're using this every time you're doing a pool to get that bonus dot damage and to reduce the damage incoming to you as the tank. Let's go ahead and talk about stat prioritization. For Brewmaster Monk, obviously item level above all else, but in order it will go Verse, Crit, and Mastery. Let's go ahead and talk about your main defensives and your main offensives as a Brewmaster Monk. Let's go ahead and talk about one of your really strong offensives called Touch of Death. Touch of Death, you exploit the enemy's target's weakness point, instantly killing them when they are below 15% health. This also cleanses/reduces delayed stagger damage by 200% of damage dealt. Next, let's talk about Weapons of Order. For the next 30 seconds, your mastery is increased by 9%. Additionally, Cake Smash cooldown is reset instantly, and enemies hit by Cake Smash or Rising Sun Kick take 8% increased damage from you for 10 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So this is an amazing defensive ability, but it is also amazing offensive ability because it resets your Cake Smash, which can give you a cooldown reduction on your Purifying Brews, which heal you. It also helps you do 8% increased damage with Cake Smash or Rising Sun Kick, stacking up to 4 times for 10 seconds. You really only want to use this ability when you've already used Cake Smash or you have no charges left. You need to refund that cooldown for your brews. The next offensive we'll talk about is Exploding Keg. Exploding Keg hurls a flaming keg at the target location, dealing fire damage to nearby enemies, causing your attacks against them to deal additional fire damage and causing their melee attacks to deal 100% reduced damage for the next 3 seconds. So this is an amazing offensive ability, but it also is an amazing defensive ability. And we will talk about this ability in our core rotation later on in this video. Now that we've talked mostly of our offensive abilities, let's talk about our defensive abilities. The first defensive we'll talk about is Dampen Harm. Dampen Harm reduces all damage you take by 20% to 50% for the next 10 seconds, with the larger attacks being reduced by more. So this can be used for really big pools. I highly recommend mostly using this for tank busters, or if you know there's going to be a big hit coming in that's magical damage, because it is a very long cooldown, so I would make sure you're using this in mostly dire situations. The same applies to Fortifying Brew. Fortifying Brew turns your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increasing your current and maximum health by 20% and reducing all damage you take by 20%. This can be combined with other Fortifying Brew effects as well. Now remember, this Fortifying Brew is a very long cooldown, so I would make sure you are only using this if you are about to die or if you're about to wipe to a boss and your team needs you to stay alive. So I would use this in even more dire situations than Dampen Harm. But don't let me be the reason that you're scared to use this. If you are about to die, make sure you are using Fortifying Brew. The next offensive we'll talk about is Diffuse Magic. Diffuse Magic reduces magic damage you take by 60% for 6 seconds and transfers all currently active harmful magic effects on you back to their original caster if possible. So this can be an offensive, but mostly you will use it as a defensive if you know there's going to be a big magic hit that you really can't sustain with your stagger because your stagger's too high. It is a decently long cooldown, but you can use this frequently if you need to. The last offensive we're going to talk about, and probably the most important, is Celestial Brew. Celestial Brew is when you take a swig of strong brew that coalesces purified chi escaping your body into a celestial guard, absorbing a % of damage, and purifying stagger damage increases absorption by up to 200%. Now you can increase this absorption shield by having stacks of purified chi. We get purified chi stacks by using Purified Brew. So the Purified Brew, you want to make sure that your cooldown is constantly up and those purified chi stacks are constantly growing higher. So the higher chi stacks means the larger the absorption shield that you will get. Now if you're doing a much larger pool, or if you're doing higher keys, you want to make sure that you have at least 9 stacks of purified chi before you use Celestial Brew. But in much lower keys, you can probably get away with between 4 and 5 stacks of purified chi before you use Celestial Brew. Let's go ahead and talk about your general opener as a Brewmaster Monk. First off, you're going to want to roll in and use Rushing Jade Wind. Then you'll want to use Keg Smash on the first target. Right after using Keg Smash, you'll want to use Breath of Fire to get that extra damage reduction and Burning Dot on all the targets. Then you want to use Blackout Kick on CD, followed by another Keg Smash. Then most likely you will need to use a charge of your Purifying Brew. And finally, you will want to make sure that your Blackout Kick and Rising Sun Kick are on cooldown at all times. Let's go ahead and talk about some final tips that I have for you when it comes to playing Brewmaster Monk. My first tip I have for you is making sure that you're using your Blackout Kick and Rising Sun Kick off cooldown and not using your filler abilities like Spinning Crane Kick too often. You want to make sure that your Blackout Kick and your Rising Sun Kick are used more often and are constantly on cooldown because they will grant you far more damage than what Spinning Crane Kick will. The next tip I have for you is also kiting. Kiting as a tank, especially when you're playing Brewmaster Monk, it's incredibly strong because time will pass on your stagger bar. If you're farther away from enemies and you are not taking damage, which is increasing your stagger bar, it will dissipate over time and you will be taking less damage in the long run. So don't be afraid to kite if you're taking a lot of damage. Your healer and group will follow you in that kite. Just make sure you do not pull them into another pack. The next tip I have you is make sure you're using your first charge on Purifying Brew on CD and delaying your second for high stagger. I see too many Brewmaster Monks use both in one sitting to where you don't even have enough stagger and then you don't have any Purifying Brews to cleanse 50% of your stagger, so you'll take too much damage too quickly and usually you'll end up getting one shot. And that's all I really have for you guys. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you sub to the YouTube, follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and also I stream on Twitch, so if you want to watch me live playing these tanks, you can follow me on Twitch and watch my streams there. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.